5,000 years ago, in the scorching deserts of southern Mesopotamia, a civilization emerged that would change the course of human history forever. They invented the wheel, created the first written language, built the first cities, and established the foundation of everything we call civilization today. Yet their name has been nearly erased from popular memory. The Sumerians weren't just another ancient people. They were the architects of human progress itself. While most of the world still lived in scattered tribes, hunting and gathering for survival, the Sumerians were building towering ziggurats that touched the heavens, developing complex legal systems, and creating art that still moves us today. But here's what makes their story truly extraordinary. They appeared seemingly out of nowhere. No gradual evolution from primitive tribes. No clear ancestral lineage. One day, the archaeological record shows simple farming communities, and the next, we find sophisticated cities with advanced technology and intricate social structures that wouldn't be matched for thousands of years. Who were these mysterious people who gave birth to civilization? Where did they come from? How did they accomplish what took the rest of humanity millennia to achieve? Their story begins in the fertile marshlands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, in a land they called the cradle between the rivers, Mesopotamia. The year is approximately 3,500 before Christ. The Great Pyramids of Egypt won't be built for another 1,000 years. Stonehenge is still just an idea in some distant future. Rome doesn't exist. Neither does Athens, nor Jerusalem. But in the sweltering heat of southern Iraq, something unprecedented is happening. Small farming settlements are rapidly transforming into bustling urban centers. Mud brick buildings rise higher than anything humanity has ever attempted. Complex irrigation systems stretch across the landscape like veins, bringing life to the desert. And for the first time in human history, people are making marks on clay tablets that represent not just pictures, but ideas, sounds, and abstract concepts. This is where our story truly begins, with a people so advanced that their achievements seem almost impossible for their time, yet so mysterious that we're still uncovering their secrets today. The land that would become the heart of Sumerian civilization was unlike anywhere else on Earth. Picture vast wetlands stretching to the horizon, fed by two of the world's great rivers. The Tigris and Euphrates carved their way through the landscape, depositing rich, black soil that made the region incredibly fertile. But this gift came with a price. Devastating floods that could wipe out entire communities, followed by scorching droughts that turned the land into cracked wasteland. Around 4,000 before Christ, the ancestors of the Sumerians faced a choice that would define human civilization. They could continue their nomadic lifestyle, moving with the seasons and the herds, or they could attempt something that had never been tried before, taming the rivers themselves. They chose the impossible. The early Sumerians, whose original name for themselves was Sag-Gig-Ga, meaning the black-headed people, began the monumental task of controlling nature itself. They dug canals, built levees, and created the world's first sophisticated irrigation system. But this wasn't just about farming. It required unprecedented cooperation, planning, and social organization. For the first time in human history, large groups of people had to work together toward common goals that extended far beyond individual survival. They needed leaders to coordinate massive construction projects, priests to determine when to plant and harvest, and scribes to keep track of increasingly complex transactions. From this necessity, civilization was born. By 3500 before Christ, the first true Sumerian cities began to emerge. Uruk, which archaeologists believe may have been the world's first city, housed between 40,000 and 80,000 people, a number that wouldn't be matched in Europe for thousands of years. Ur, Lagash, Nippur, and Babylon followed, each becoming an independent city-state with its own patron god, ruler, and character. But who were these people physically and culturally? The Sumerians spoke a language unlike any other known to humanity, neither Semitic nor Indo-European. It was a language isolate, as unique as their sudden appearance in history. They depicted themselves in art as people with large eyes, often bald or with dark hair, wearing distinctive konakes, tufted skirts that became their signature garment. Their society was remarkably sophisticated. At the top stood the Ensi, or Lugal, priest-kings who claimed divine authority to rule. Below them were priests, scribes, merchants, craftsmen, farmers, and slaves. But unlike many ancient civilizations, Sumerian society showed remarkable social mobility. A talented scribe could rise to positions of great influence, and successful merchants could challenge the authority of traditional elites. The heart of each city was the ziggurat, a massive step pyramid that served as both temple and administrative center. These weren't just religious buildings. They were the equivalent of today's city halls, banks, libraries, and universities all rolled into one. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, dedicated to the moon god Nana, stood nearly 100 feet tall and could be seen for miles across the flat Mesopotamian plain. But perhaps the most revolutionary Sumerian innovation was writing itself. Around 3200 before Christ, Sumerian scribes developed cuneiform, literally meaning wedge-shaped, the world's first writing system. It began as simple pictographs carved into clay tablets to track grain supplies and livestock, but quickly evolved into something far more sophisticated. Before we continue with how this writing system would change everything, let me make a quick invitation. If you're new to the channel and enjoying the content so far, please subscribe and click like to help the channel grow. Now, let's return to ancient Sumer and discover how a simple accounting system became the foundation of all human knowledge. The genius of cuneiform wasn't just that it recorded information. It was that it could represent abstract concepts, emotions, and complex ideas. A Sumerian scribe could write poetry, legal contracts, mathematical equations, astronomical observations, and historical records. For the first time, human knowledge could be preserved, shared, and built upon across generations. This explosion of literacy led to an unprecedented flowering of human achievement. The Sumerians created the first schools, where young scribes learned not just writing but mathematics, astronomy, literature, and law. They developed a sophisticated number system based on 60, which is why we still divide circles into 360 degrees and hours into 60 minutes. But the Sumerians weren't just practical innovators. They were also profound thinkers and storytellers. They created the world's first epic literature, including the Epic of Gilgamesh, which tells the story of a king's quest for immortality and contains a flood narrative that would later influence the biblical story of Noah. Their religious beliefs were equally sophisticated. The Sumerians worshipped a pantheon of gods, who controlled different aspects of life: An, the god of heaven; Enlil, the god of air and storms; Enki, the god of wisdom and fresh water; and Inanna, the goddess of love and war. These weren't distant, unknowable deities but complex personalities with human-like emotions, conflicts, and relationships. But what made Sumerian civilization truly revolutionary was how all these elements came together to create something entirely new in human experience: urban civilization. Their cities weren't just large settlements. They were complex ecosystems where thousands of people with different skills, beliefs, and social positions could coexist and collaborate. But what none expected was that this remarkable civilization would face challenges that would test everything they had built, leading to discoveries about human nature and social organization that still influence our world today. The challenges facing Sumerian civilization weren't just external. They were fundamental questions about how human societies could function at unprecedented scales. As their cities grew larger and more complex, the Sumerians encountered problems no civilization had ever faced before. The first major crisis emerged around 2900 before Christ, when the city-states began competing fiercely for control of water resources. The irrigation systems that had made their civilization possible now became sources of deadly conflict. Upstream cities could cut off water supplies to downstream neighbors, while disputes over canal maintenance and water rights led to the world's first organized warfare between complex societies. King Eannatum of Lagash, one of the first rulers whose name and deeds we know in detail, waged a series of brutal campaigns against the neighboring city of Umma over control of fertile borderlands. The Stele of the Vultures, one of our earliest historical documents, depicts the aftermath of these battles with shocking honesty. Piles of enemy corpses being devoured by carrion birds while Eannatum stands triumphant. But these conflicts forced the Sumerians to develop something revolutionary: the concept of law itself. Around 2100 before Christ, Ur-Nammu of Ur created what many scholars consider the world's first written legal code, predating the famous Code of Hammurabi by 300 years. This wasn't just a list of punishments. It was a sophisticated attempt to create justice through consistent, predictable rules that applied to everyone. The Code of Ur-Nammu reveals a society grappling with questions that still challenge us today. How do you balance individual rights with collective needs? How do you punish wrongdoing while maintaining social stability? The Sumerians' answers were surprisingly nuanced. They established different penalties for crimes based on social status, but also created protections for the poor and vulnerable that were revolutionary for their time. Meanwhile, Sumerian achievements in technology and science continued to astound. Their mathematicians developed the concept of place value notation and created sophisticated geometric principles that allowed them to build increasingly complex structures. Their astronomers mapped the movements of planets and stars with precision that wouldn't be matched for millennia, creating the first accurate calendar and predicting eclipses. But perhaps their most remarkable achievement was in the realm of literature and human psychology. The Epic of Gilgamesh, composed around 2100 before Christ, wasn't just entertainment. It was humanity's first serious exploration of mortality, friendship, power, and the meaning of existence. When Gilgamesh's best friend Enkidu dies, the king's grief and desperate search for immortality speaks to universal human experiences that resonate just as powerfully today. The story reveals how deeply the Sumerians understood human nature. Gilgamesh begins as a tyrannical ruler who oppresses his people, but through his friendship with Enkidu and his confrontation with death, he learns wisdom and becomes a just king. This psychological journey, from selfishness to wisdom through suffering, would become one of the fundamental patterns of human storytelling. As Sumerian civilization reached its peak around 2000 before Christ, their influence spread far beyond Mesopotamia. Sumerian cuneiform was adopted by the Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Hittites. Their mathematical and astronomical knowledge influenced Greek philosophers. Their legal concepts shaped Roman law. Their mythologies inspired biblical narratives. But the Sumerians also developed something that would prove even more enduring: the idea of progress itself. Earlier civilizations saw time as cyclical, with golden ages inevitably followed by decline. The Sumerians were among the first to believe that human knowledge and achievement could accumulate over generations, leading to ever greater accomplishments. This belief drove them to create the world's first libraries, where cuneiform tablets were carefully organized and preserved. The library at Nippur contained over 60,000 tablets covering everything from poetry and mythology to mathematical treatises and administrative records. For the first time in history, human knowledge was being systematically collected and transmitted to future generations. Their merchants, traveling along trade routes that stretched from the Indus Valley to Anatolia, spread Sumerian innovations across the known world. Sumerian weights and measures became international standards. Their accounting methods revolutionized commerce. Their artistic styles influenced cultures thousands of miles away. But success brought its own challenges. As Sumerian cities became wealthier and more powerful, they attracted the attention of nomadic peoples from the surrounding regions. The Akkadians, led by the legendary Sargon of Akkad around 2334 before Christ, conquered most of Sumer and created the world's first multi-ethnic empire. Rather than destroying Sumerian civilization, however, the Akkadians embraced it. Sargon adopted Sumerian administrative practices, promoted Sumerian literature, and maintained Sumerian religious traditions. This pattern would repeat throughout Mesopotamian history. Conquerors consistently adopted Sumerian innovations rather than replacing them. The genius of Sumerian civilization wasn't just in their individual achievements, but in their ability to create systems of knowledge and organization that could survive political upheaval. Their scribal schools continued to train bureaucrats for successive empires. Their legal principles influenced law codes for thousands of years. Their literary works remained popular throughout the ancient world. By 1750 before Christ, political control of Mesopotamia had passed to Hammurabi and the Babylonians. But Babylonian scribes still studied Sumerian literature and maintained Sumerian temple rituals. The Sumerians had become the intellectual foundation upon which all subsequent Mesopotamian civilizations were built. However, what was about to happen would surpass all expectations and reveal secrets that remained hidden for millennia, challenging everything we thought we knew about the origins of human civilization and the true extent of Sumerian influence on the ancient world. The true extent of Sumerian influence on human civilization only began to emerge in the 19th and 20th centuries, when archaeologists started uncovering evidence that would revolutionize our understanding of ancient history. What they discovered was so extraordinary that it forced scholars to completely rewrite the story of human progress. In 1922, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley began excavating the Royal Cemetery of Ur, and what he found defied all expectations. Buried beneath centuries of accumulated debris were tombs containing treasures that rivaled anything found in Egyptian pyramids: intricate golden helmets, elaborate headdresses adorned with precious stones, musical instruments of breathtaking beauty, and artifacts that demonstrated a level of craftsmanship that seemed impossible for such an ancient civilization. But the most shocking discovery wasn't the wealth. It was evidence of human sacrifice on a scale that revealed the true power and complexity of Sumerian society. Queen Puabi's tomb contained the remains of 74 attendants who had apparently willingly followed their ruler into death, dressed in their finest clothes and arranged in careful formation around elaborate chariots and musical instruments. This discovery forced archaeologists to confront a troubling truth about Sumerian civilization. These weren't simple farmers who had gradually developed urban skills. They were a sophisticated, hierarchical society with beliefs and practices that demonstrated an understanding of power, ceremony, and social organization that was centuries ahead of their time. Even more remarkable was the preservation of organic materials in the Mesopotamian climate. Woolley's team recovered the world's oldest known musical instruments, including lyres decorated with golden bull heads that still retain traces of their original wooden soundboards. When modern musicians attempted to recreate these instruments, they discovered that Sumerian musical theory was far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The Sumerians had developed a sophisticated understanding of harmony, rhythm, and musical composition that influenced every subsequent musical tradition in the Middle East and Mediterranean. Fragments of musical notation found on cuneiform tablets revealed that they used scales and musical intervals that wouldn't be discovered in Europe for thousands of years. But perhaps the most profound revelation came from the translation of Sumerian literary works that had been copied and recopied for over 2,000 years by successive civilizations. The Epic of Gilgamesh, when fully translated, revealed not just a great story but a sophisticated exploration of themes that wouldn't appear in Western literature until the classical period of Greece and Rome. The flood narrative in Gilgamesh, for instance, wasn't just similar to the biblical story of Noah, it was clearly the original source. The Sumerian tale of Utnapishtim surviving a divinely sent flood by building an ark was being told in Mesopotamia more than 1,000 years before the earliest biblical texts were composed. This discovery forced scholars to acknowledge that many of the foundational stories of Western civilization had Sumerian origins. Even more startling was the discovery of Sumerian influence on Greek philosophy and science. When scholars began systematically comparing Sumerian mathematical and astronomical texts with later Greek works, they found unmistakable connections. The geometric principles used by Greek mathematicians, the astronomical observations that formed the foundation of Greek science, and even some philosophical concepts could be traced back to Sumerian sources. The Sumerian base 60 number system, which seems arbitrary to modern minds, was actually a mathematical breakthrough that allowed for incredibly precise calculations. Unlike our base 10 system, base 60 can be divided evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30, making it ideal for astronomical calculations and architectural planning. This system was so effective that we still use it today for measuring time and angles. Archaeological discoveries in the 20th century also revealed the true extent of Sumerian trade networks. Artifacts of unmistakably Sumerian origin have been found in archaeological sites from the Indus Valley to Eastern Europe. Sumerian cylinder seals, small stone cylinders carved with intricate designs and used to mark ownership and authenticate documents, have been discovered in contexts that suggest Sumerian merchants were trading across distances that wouldn't be matched again until the Roman Empire. But the most revolutionary discovery was the realization that Sumerian innovations in agriculture, urban planning, and social organization had been so successful that they became the template for all subsequent civilizations in the region. The Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians all built their empires on foundations laid by the Sumerians thousands of years earlier. Modern urban planners studying ancient Sumerian cities have been amazed by their sophistication. The city of Ur, for instance, had paved streets, sophisticated drainage systems, multi-story buildings with indoor plumbing, and zoning that separated residential, commercial, and religious districts. These weren't primitive settlements that gradually developed urban features. They were planned cities that incorporated advanced engineering principles from their initial construction. The Sumerian invention of bureaucracy, the systematic organization of government through specialized offices and record-keeping, became the foundation of every complex state that followed. Their development of standardized weights and measures, formal legal procedures, and written contracts created the framework for all subsequent commercial and legal systems. Even their religious innovations had lasting impact. The Sumerian concept of divine kingship, the idea that rulers derived their authority from the gods and were responsible for maintaining cosmic order, became the foundation of royal ideology throughout the ancient world. Egyptian pharaohs, Persian kings, and Roman emperors all adapted Sumerian concepts of divine rule to legitimize their power. But perhaps the most profound Sumerian contribution was their fundamental optimism about human potential. Unlike many ancient cultures that saw history as inevitable decline from a golden age, the Sumerians believed in progress. They thought that through cooperation, innovation, and the accumulation of knowledge, humans could create better societies and achieve greater understanding of the world around them. This belief drove them to create institutions, schools, libraries, legal systems, and urban governments, designed to preserve and transmit knowledge across generations. It's a concept so fundamental to modern civilization that we take it for granted, but it was revolutionary when the Sumerians first conceived it over 5,000 years ago. The final vindication of Sumerian achievement came with the decipherment of the cuneiform tablets found in Sumerian libraries. These revealed a civilization of extraordinary intellectual sophistication, one that had grappled with questions of justice, mortality, the nature of divinity, and the purpose of human existence with a depth and nuance that rivals any philosophical tradition. As we piece together the full scope of Sumerian civilization, we're forced to confront a humbling truth. They accomplished in a few centuries what took the rest of humanity millennia to achieve, and they did it so thoroughly that their innovations became the invisible foundation of everything we call civilization. As we stand at the end of this remarkable journey through Sumerian civilization, we're left with a profound realization that should humble and inspire us in equal measure. The Sumerians weren't just another ancient people who happened to live a long time ago. They were the architects of virtually everything we consider fundamental to human civilization. When we write our names, we're using a technology they invented. When we live in cities with organized governments, we're participating in systems they created. When we use mathematics, study astronomy, or read literature that explores the deepest questions of human existence, we're building on foundations they laid over 5,000 years ago. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Sumerian civilization isn't what they accomplished. It's how quickly they accomplished it. In the span of just a few centuries, they transformed from simple farming communities into sophisticated urban societies that wouldn't be equaled anywhere else in the world for thousands of years. This wasn't gradual evolution. It was a quantum leap in human achievement. Their story reveals something profound about human potential. When people come together with shared goals, when they develop systems for preserving and transmitting knowledge, when they believe in the possibility of progress, extraordinary things become possible. The Sumerians proved that civilization isn't inevitable. It's a choice that requires intelligence, cooperation, and tremendous effort to create and maintain. Today, as we face our own challenges with urban planning, environmental management, social organization, and technological change, we can learn from Sumerian solutions. They showed us that complex problems require sophisticated institutions, that diversity of skills and perspectives strengthens society, and that investing in education and knowledge preservation pays dividends across generations. The Sumerians also remind us that civilization is fragile. Their individual city-states eventually fell to conquest. Their language ceased to be spoken, and their achievements were forgotten for millennia. But the systems they created, writing, law, urban government, formal education, and the belief in human progress, proved more durable than any empire. In many ways, we are all inheritors of Sumerian civilization. Every time we participate in democratic government, engage in commerce using standardized currency, attend school to learn accumulated human knowledge, or create art that explores universal themes, we're continuing traditions that began in ancient Mesopotamia. Their legacy challenges us to think about what we're contributing to the long arc of human civilization. The Sumerians faced the unknown with courage and creativity, building something unprecedented that would benefit countless future generations. They remind us that we too are part of an ongoing human story, one that began in the marshlands of ancient Iraq and continues in our own efforts to understand ourselves and our world. The next time you see a sunset over a modern city, with its geometric patterns of light stretching to the horizon, remember that this scene would have been familiar to a Sumerian standing atop the great ziggurat of Ur over 4,000 years ago. The details have changed, but the fundamental human achievement, creating complex, collaborative societies that allow millions of people to live and work together, remains the same. The Sumerians proved that humans are capable of extraordinary things when we combine intelligence, cooperation, and the courage to attempt the impossible. Their story isn't just ancient history. It's a blueprint for what we can accomplish when we remember that civilization isn't something that happens to us, but something we create together. If you made it this far and aren't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe now, leave a like, and share in the comments which aspect of Sumerian civilization you think had the greatest impact on our modern world. Until the next video.